Hello, dear students. This is Professor John Forsyth again, and today we're going to go over the Crash Course Python book, Chapter 8, Principles, which talks about functions. So functions can take some time to get used to, but they're very helpful and really necessary if you're going to be writing a lot of code to make your work easier as a programmer. So I'm just going to write some comments here to kind of talk about the principles I want to cover, just to make sure I do it in order and don't forget. So first we want to talk about positional arguments in functions. And then we want to talk about difference between arguments and parameters. And we'll talk about keyword arguments and a variable number of arguments. Okay, so first of all, positional arguments are basically the default. So if we create a function that says print my args, and I have to make a caveat. I personally, as a habit, I don't really distinguish my vocabulary between arguments and parameters, but so I mix it up probably in this video, but if when I get to that point, I'll talk about how the book defines it, which is technically like the correct way. So let's just say we have a couple arguments called A and B. Okay, so this is called the header of our function. Def indicates we're going to define a function. It's short for define, so that way you can remember it. And then print my args just tells what I'm going to do in this function. And I have A and B. And then you need the colon, just like with for loops and with if, else, while. The colon is really common to indicate that you're going to need to write a body below that, indented. Okay, so we're just going to print the arguments. We'll use an F string. A is A, and B is B, and that is that. Okay, so then we run our program expecting it to do what we just did, but it does nothing. And the reason why is because we just defined a function, we didn't actually use it. In order for it to print something, you need to use it. So let's run print my args, and we'll give it a number 1 and a number 2. Notice my editor showed the A and the B. It's smart. I'm using Pycharm. It recognized that was the name that I gave up here, the two names of those. So yeah, so it's going to go ahead and do that for me automatically. If I play that, it shows A and B, similar to my little code editor hints, because that's exactly how I wrote it right here. So this is pretty common way to use functions, pretty common way to do it. But there is another way you could mix these up. Like, for example, if you were using a function and you know what the names should be, what the names are going to be of the variables inside the function, like here it's A and B, but you forgot which order they're in. So you can mix up the order if I change this. So delete that. And then I'm going to say B equals 3 and A equals 1. So now A is set to 1, and even though A was defined to be the first, because I'm doing the equals, it will let me switch them up. So what that means is the A is going to print first 1 here, even though I'm giving it as the second argument, and the B will be number 3 because I'm using equals. So if I play that, that's what I get, 1 and 3, just to make sure, sanity check. If I change that to a 4 and I play it, 1 and 4. Okay, so the B is a 4. This brings us up to the point of keyword arguments. So I'm gonna do that first. So with keyword arguments, let's just define a new function here. Print my keyword args. Okay, and this time I'm gonna say we actually have an A, and it takes a default of 0, and a B, which takes a default of 4. So now I can print just like I did before. My A is A and B is B. Okay, so there's my F string, just prints it. And then I need to change my indentation and call my function. And we're going to use, let's call it with 0 arguments to start off. So keyword arguments let you give defaults. So if you pass it nothing, it will do something useful still. So we have A is 0, B is 4. Those are the defaults. If I want to change those defaults, I can say make A 1 and make B 10. A is 1 and B is 10. Notice it's printing what I have above because I didn't. I'm going to comment that out because I'm still running that code too. So okay, so A is 1 and B is 10. You can mix positional and keyword, but the keywords need to be at the end. So I can say, let's have an A, so this one is going to be required, and the B is optional. So now I can call this function with 1 argument, and just to show you that it is required, if I try to call it without any arguments as I did before, it's not going to work because the A has to be provided. So there's an error. It's missing 1 required positional argument. Get used to reading errors. They're your friends. They help you. Learn to interpret them if you don't understand them. Just a good pro tip there. Okay, so if I go ahead and pass a 5, now A has a number assigned to it and B is just 4. And I could also give B a different number, 7, and B is 7. Okay, so then let's talk about the difference between arguments and parameters. So just real briefly, when you call a function, you pass it arguments, 5 and 7 in this case. When you define a function, these are the parameters. And in the body of the function, they're considered parameters as well. But myself and other programmers will mix those terms. I don't think it's really important to distinguish those. Usually, there may be a case where it's helpful to make that distinction. But programmers mix their vocab on that. Okay, so let's also look at a variable number of arguments. So we can say, in fact, let's just delete everything up to this point and focus on this one part. Okay, so we're going to have a function with variable number of args. So to do that, I can say, it's really common to call it args and give it a star. I believe the star comes before. That looks right. Okay, and now we can print our args. So the star is kind of special. It's saying that that's a variable number. So now if I call this function, I can call it with 1, 2, and that gives me a tuple here. So it actually stores it in a tuple called args. Just to prove that that's a tuple, let's print the type. So wrap this inside type and it'll print back the type of parameter I have. So it is a tuple, which we went over in a previous chapter. Okay, and that it also allows a variable number. So I could say, well, give me 3, 4, 5. So if for some reason you're not sure how many arguments you're going to want to use in your function, this star args allows you to do that. This is a convention to call it args. You'll see this in Python like documentation and perhaps other people's code. So that's just a convention. I could have called it like blah, which is a terrible name. And if I play that, it'll still work. So I get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Cool. Now, when you mix and match, you can mix keyword args and positional args. Sorry, variable number of args and positional. So I have an A and a B here. So I can print positional. So those are required. A and B. And I can keep printing my, let's make it clear. And let's call it the conventional name because that's just good practice. It actually could be useful if you wanted to make your code meaningful, like you knew what this was going to be, like if you had a list of numbers and that was clear that your arguments needed to be a list of numbers or a set of numbers that you pass it. Now it's not working because syntax error, unterminated f string. Okay, I need to close my quote here. Okay, so if I play that, now I can mix and match. But your positional arguments do have to come before. Otherwise, you wouldn't know. You wouldn't be able to have like a variable number of these variable number of args. One other thing, you can also add keyword args, and the convention is to call them KW for keyword args. And again, this is also customizable. You could call it something else if that makes sense to make your code more readable. And what that is going to give you is basically a dictionary. So let me just prove that. Our type of keyword args is going to be a dictionary, and remember to pass keyword args, you'll give it like key 1. So notice I don't have key 1 up here. This is almost, it's also kind of like a variable number of arguments, but I can, and I don't have to specify what the keys are in this dictionary beforehand. So I'm just making this key 1 up. The body of the code could require it to be key 1. Let me demonstrate that. So we'll just say, we'll give it a couple keys. So there's key 1 is my first key. It's just a string. And we'll say key 2 is key 2. So nothing too crazy. We'll play that. And notice it is a dictionary, the type. If I just go ahead and print what I have, keyword args, add key 1, my first key, there's my dictionary, my positional args and my variable args. So using these together, they need to appear in this order. And you can use 1 by itself or positional plus another one, or probably these two as well. If I did require a specific key to be provided, I could check that, but if I, just to show you that it would break. So here's my dictionary name, KW args, and I have like key 1, for example, is going to be required because I'm going to print it there. So if I do that print. There's my first key. That's my variable right there. If I were to change this key to be key 0, and I played it, I no longer have key 1, and this code will break. Error, there is no key 1. So hopefully that gives you good info on functions. There's one other thing, because we have gone over regular expressions in this class up to this point. So I want to show you a principle of making code easier using regular expressions. So say I have just a simple string that's hello, how are you? I'm going to call it S for short. That's my string. Okay, and then I want to know if the string has the word R in it, okay? So my search pattern, I'm going to store in a variable called pattern. So here's our regular expressions. You should always prefix with an R before the string. And I want to check if it has R inside my string, okay? And I'm going to need to import my RE module, regular expression module, in order to do some matching. And then I'm going to just use my re.search, and that's going to tell me whether it matches or not. Okay, so here's my pattern, here's my string to match, which I've stored in 2 variables up here, and we're just going to print the Boolean version of that. So if it matches, the Boolean will be true, the Boolean value. If it does not match, it will be false. So let's go ahead and play that. I'm getting a slight error. I think I might be missing a parenthesis. Yep. There's actually 3 parentheses. It's getting a little bit crazy here, but because I wrapped it in bool, it's wrapped in print, and search also has its own parentheses. So I need to do triple at the end there. Okay, so if I play that, let's see. True, it does match, okay? So this pattern is pretty easy to understand. If our regular expression was a little more complex, like say we want to check if there's a question mark at the end. So if you remember, regular expression uses question mark to tell you whether the character before it exists or not in your string, in what you're searching. So in this case, this would return true also. Actually, it wouldn't. Sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. But the point I want to make though is that question mark is a special symbol in regular expression. So if we want it to be a literal question mark, we need to do the backslash. Okay, and we want to say the question mark happens at the end. The $ matches the end. It doesn't match any particular character. It just says this question mark happens at the very end of my string. Okay, so if I play that, it is true. And let's say, for example, this regular expression is designed to tell us, is this a question? Is this sentence a question or not? And the way we're determining that is if it has a question mark. So you could read that and understand that fairly easy, but you might take a second. If the regular expression pattern was more complicated, it would be maybe a little more difficult. Even if you wrote it, you come back to it later and you have to read it again and interpret, okay, that's a literal question mark and end of string, and I'm probably trying to find out if this is a question or not. There's a really great way to make that really clear, and that is by using a function. Okay, so we could write a function, and the name of the function is going to be very clear also. Is this a question? Okay, and then in order to determine that, we're going to put our pattern inside this function. So there's our pattern, and we are going to put the actual search right here. And let's say we want a Boolean. Okay, so we want it to be true or false. And if I play that, well, I need to call the function. And I actually need to print the result because it won't print for me unless I print that. Okay, notice it printed none. And the reason it printed none is because I'm not returning this Boolean value from the function. And so if you don't return anything, Python will assume that you don't really want to return anything, and Python will magically do this for you right here. I didn't write that, Python did it for me. But I actually wanted to return the Boolean value of my pattern, which basically tells me did this match or not. That's what I want to return, and since it'll be returned there, this will now print true or false. And now I'm asking, is this a question? I also, by the way, need to pass my string to it, which is my S above here, and this needs to take an S here. I could have called this a different name, like string to search. Let's say that. So I'm passing an S here, but as an argument, but the parameter name is string to search. So now if I play that, it'll say true. This is a question. So my code is much more readable. This is a really good strategy to make your code readable. This process is called abstracting. So rather than having to read this and interpret that I'm trying to find out if there's a question mark at the end, I can wrap that in a function that's clearly labeled. This is a question. So this is a really good strategy for making your code understandable and making it easy to go through and understand. Okay, yeah, I'm trying to find out if this is a question or whatever complexity you're doing within your code. So, and just to show you that if that didn't have a question mark at the end, it would return false, that this is not a question. Thanks so much for watching. There's our faults. Have a great day.